$90 billion missing? Carney's Liberals under fire for shocking budget cover-up allegation. Mark Carney entered the Prime Minister's office with a strong reputation as a global economic expert, having served as the governor of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. His ascent to the Liberal Party leadership after the April 2025 snap election sparked hope among Canadians for fiscal discipline and sound management. However, the initial optimism has quickly soured, replaced by accusations of financial mismanagement and a looming crisis that casts a shadow over his administration. The alarming projection of a $90 billion deficit for the 2025 fiscal year has sent shockwaves through the nation. Economists, opposition leaders, and citizens alike are expressing deep concern as the Liberal government's financial situation appears increasingly opaque. The Parliamentary Budget Officer, PBO, usually a neutral figure, has publicly criticized the lack of transparency from Carney's administration, signaling how serious the concerns are. This has fostered an atmosphere of distrust, leaving many Canadians anxious about how the deficit might affect social services, healthcare, and infrastructure. Compounding the issue is the decision to delay the federal budget until October 2025. Although the government cites a shortened parliamentary session and unresolved trade issues as reasons, many view this delay as a strategic maneuver to avoid scrutiny. This uncertainty creates unease among citizens, who are left in the dark about how their tax dollars are being managed and where resources will be allocated in the upcoming fiscal year. The potential for cuts to vital services looms large, contributing to a growing sense of instability in the Canadian economy. One of the most contentious issues in this environment is the substantial increase in defense spending. Carney's administration has announced a $9 billion rise in the defense budget, a decision that has garnered praise from some international allies but raised eyebrows at home. Many Canadians are questioning the timing and necessity of this increase, especially considering the ambitious expansions of social programs like pharmacare and dental care. Critics argue that while these programs are essential, they come at a high cost that further inflates the deficit, raising the question of whether military spending should take precedence over pressing social needs. These financial choices have led to fundamental concerns about the government's priorities. Canadians are increasingly worried that military spending is being prioritized over essential social programs that directly impact their lives. The lack of a cohesive fiscal strategy leaves many feeling unsettled as they grapple with rising defense budgets while social safety nets remain vulnerable. This stark contrast between military and social spending reflects a growing divide in public perception about what constitutes responsible governance. Carney's economic philosophy, shaped by his extensive experience, is also under scrutiny. While often hailed as a fiscal genius, his record suggests a preference for expansive government spending over market-driven solutions. Critics point to his book values, which they interpret as advocating for increased government control, an approach some argue is ill-suited for a nation that values individual freedoms and market efficiency. This philosophical divide raises critical questions about the direction in which Carney aims to lead the country and whether his vision aligns with the aspirations of everyday Canadians. Despite his impressive background, Carney's management of Canada's finances has yet to inspire confidence. The growing deficit and delays in budget announcements have shaken his image as a steady hand at the helm, leaving citizens anxious about the future. In contrast, provinces like Alberta, under Premier Danielle Smith, have achieved budget surpluses and tax cuts, showcasing a different approach that emphasizes restraint. This comparison intensifies doubts about Carney's capabilities and raises questions about whether his strategies genuinely serve the interests of Canadians. Revenue generation is another significant concern under Carney's governance. The introduction of a retroactive digital services tax, increased carbon taxes, and border adjustments aimed at addressing climate change have raised alarms among various sectors. Critics argue that these measures could deter private sector investment and burden consumers, complicating Canada's path to sustainable economic growth. Many fear that this approach might stifle innovation, leading to job losses and diminishing competitiveness. Investment strategies under Carney's leadership have also drawn skepticism. Substantial taxpayer funds have been directed towards sectors like electric vehicle manufacturing and even unconventional ventures, such as cricket farming. While innovation is crucial, Critics argue that these subsidies reflect a continuation of government handouts that prioritize short-term gains over long-term sustainability. This raises questions about the effectiveness of such investments and whether they truly serve the best interests of Canadians, who are increasingly wary of government spending. Supporters of Carney argue that his global experience makes him well-equipped to navigate turbulent economic waters. They emphasize the need for government intervention during crises, asserting that his efforts to modernize the economy and tackle climate change are commendable. However, as the fiscal gap widens and budget transparency remains elusive, public skepticism continues to mount. Many Canadians are left wondering whether his leadership will ultimately lead to prosperity or deeper financial turmoil. The political ramifications are significant as opposition leaders, particularly Conservative Party head Pierre Poilievre, capitalize on public discontent. Poilievre has been vocal in his calls for fiscal responsibility and transparency, warning that unchecked spending threatens Canada's economic future. His message resonates with taxpayers burdened by rising costs, amplifying calls for a shift in leadership that prioritizes fiscal prudence. As Canada eagerly anticipates the October 2025 budget, pressure mounts on Carney's government to provide a clear fiscal strategy. Canadians want concrete plans that address the burgeoning deficit and outline how the government will restore financial stability. This upcoming budget will likely serve as a pivotal moment, shaping public opinion and determining the political landscape for years to come, as the decisions made will have far-reaching consequences. In summary, the looming $90 billion deficit under Mark Carney's leadership highlights a troubling chapter in Canadian fiscal policy. Delays in budget transparency, rising taxes, and escalating spending challenge the narrative of responsible economic stewardship that initially accompanied his rise. As debates intensify, Canadians face critical decisions about the country's economic direction and the kind of leadership they trust to manage their future. The stakes are high, and the next few months will be a test of Carney's ability to regain public trust and demonstrate genuine fiscal responsibility, or risk leaving a legacy of discontent and uncertainty.